The Durian Heat, bringing big ideas, critical opinions in Southeast Asia. Hey, this is Arlene.
Good morning, this is Grace.
And you're back with us at the Durian Heat, where we discuss critical issues around Southeast Asia. So today we have a guest, Grace.
Yes, we have a very special guest all the way from Philippines.
So he is a reporter with CNN Philippines, and a young guy that also won the Gawat Asiano Award. He is going to share with us about ASEAN integration as well as the youth in Southeast Asia.
And his name is Brian Poe. Let's say good morning to Brian.
Hey.
Good morning. Good morning, girls.
So, yes, like we mentioned before, we're going to talk about ASEAN integration in youth specifically. But before that, could you share your backgrounds, briefly your background and what you've been doing and what you do?
All right. So, well, as you said earlier, I'm Brian Poe. I just graduated 2013. In 2013, I helped my mom run for senator, and now she's a senator. And I worked in her staff as her legislative officer. So I helped her make the laws and prepare for debates and make her speeches and things like that. And then after a while, I actually entered show business. I had a movie and a
You
TV
have a
show.
movie?
Yeah, it's an independent film that won an advocacy award. So that, and then I did some hosting gigs and some modeling, and I ended up trying to look for something more fulfilling, and I ended up in news. So now I'm a field reporter for CNN Philippines, and I've been covering pretty much everything. They keep asking me what my specific beat is. Beat being your field of expertise as a reporter. But as of now, the office has been assigning me to pretty much everything from fires to covering the Pope, to covering bank robberies, and, you know, fuel, oil rollback prices, energy, pretty much everything under the sun, so that they can get me ready for, you know, hardcore journalism.
Wow.
Hardcore journalism.
We can imagine that it is a good preparation for you.
For sure. And you're basically covering all the aspects from politics, economics, and business as well.
Right. And sometimes it feels like I'm listening to a foreign language during the business forums and lectures, but you know, it's something you have to learn if you want to be a successful reporter.
For sure. And then they have different terminologies and also different types of, like, I would say, business language that you have to get used to.
Exactly.
So how did you get the interest to be in news? Or were you, before this, do you really, you know, immerse yourself more towards, you know, news about politics and economy in your country especially?
Right. Well, fact of the matter is, I've been reading the newspaper since I was in high school, almost every day. And, you know, for me and my family, bonding was pretty much watching the news at dinner. But it was all because of the fact that back in 2004, my grandfather ran for the presidency. And it ended up being the most controversial elections in Philippine history,
Right.
Because there was a lot of cheating that happened during the elections, a lot of anonymity that took place during the elections that ended up making a lot of people question what really happened. And during that time, the most important thing was to find out what the truth was. And that kind of stuck with me, that idea of fighting for truth, integrity in government, justice. And so I wanted to go into public service, but I didn't think that I'd go into news. So later on in college, I ended up taking a study abroad program, and I studied in Fordham University in New York. And while I was there, I took an intro to journalism course and a writing for radio and TV news course. And my teachers were the best. One was my intro to journalism teacher was a former reporter, I think, at Bloomberg, and then my other teacher was a former executive producer for ABC News International.
Yeah, so they're pretty experienced in their own field.
Exactly, and that's and I enjoyed. I mean, while I was there, I covered the Occupy Wall Street movement, and I enjoyed my work there. So when I came back here, even though my first instinct was to go into government and help my mom there, when I felt like I needed a career of my own, I realized that news is an option because one, it falls in line with the public service that I wanted to do growing up, and two, I remembered my training back in New York and how much I enjoyed it. So when they said that they were opening a CNN Philippines, I said to myself that I wanted to be a part of something new.
Mm-hmm. And there you go. You are now in CNN Philippines, reporting news
Yes.
for them. So,
Yeah.
so being a youth in the Philippines, how is the experience growing up in the Philippines and exposing yourself with a lot of the politics and economic environment there? Is it any different from youth in other Southeast Asian countries?
Okay, well, I can't really speak for other Southeast Asian countries because I mean, like, I haven't experienced growing up in other Southeast Asian countries, and Japan doesn't count as Southeast Asian since it's East Asian. That's the only other place that I stayed in for a study abroad program, so I can't really comment on that. But in the Philippines in particular, growing up as a member of the youth here, it's interesting because the Philippines isn't, I mean, its population is huge, but it's not that big. So granted, if you feel like there's an issue that you want to speak out about, literally, you can go outside and join a group of friends and really protest something, and it would most likely reach the news because you're already in the capital. So I mean, it's not. I mean, there's a lot of opportunity for the youth to be involved in
And there's
things
a lot
like
of freedom,
politics.
I suppose.
Yes. Well, in the Philippines, because of the EDSA revolution, I'm not sure if you guys are familiar, but back in the 1970s, 1980s, sorry, we overthrew a dictatorship with this thing called people power. Basically, millions of Filipinos took to the streets to oust the president in a non-violent revolution. And it actually worked. We were able to get rid of the Marcos dictatorship and install President Cory Aquino and return democracy to the Philippines. And for a time, we were at the top of the world. And because of that, it's become part of our culture, really, to encourage a sense of activism and youth participation in government issues.
So, are you yourself active in in protests and other form of participation with governmental issues?
Growing up, I was.
Especially having your mom as the senator.
Exactly. When I was younger, after my grandfather lost the elections, even though we say he won, but you know. Anyway, so when that happened, there were a lot of rallies. A lot of people were against the government at that time, and I remember I was 13 years old, and I was rallying with my mom in the streets in a city called Makati. It's our business city. It's like our version of New York's Wall Street. Anyway, while we were there, I remember they asked me if I could say anything to the president, what would it be? And at that time, I said, 1, stop lying, and 2, step down. And I remember my mom grabbing my hand and pulling me to the car and saying, we have to leave.
Apparently, you're talking too much.
Yeah, exactly. Apparently, at that time, I was so surprised because we were going home. We were escorted by a bomb squad, SWAT team, and some other police officers. And it turns out that I had just pissed off the president and we had a death threat.
Oh,
So
Wow.
yeah, that was at 13. And then I kept attending rallies for things like government accountability, leading up to even my college days. While I was in college, the group I was with, we actually pushed for the inhibition of a chief justice from the cases related to the former president, Gloria Macapagal-Arroyo. Basically, I argued that because of his close ties with the president, he shouldn't be involved with the cases of graft and corruption that she's being accused of. And so I filed an inhibition complaint against the Chief Justice, and it kind of snowballed out of proportion. And it ended up, a lot of people took wind of it and ended up filing what's it called? They ended up trying to oust him from his position as Chief Justice. So from an inhibition complaint, it became an impeachment trial. So at that point in time, my parents were telling me to lay low and stop, attending these things because it's getting out of hand. And at that point in time, I was lucky because I had just gotten accepted into Fordham University. Right. So that's when I left to go to Fordham. So I ended up, watching the whole trial process from New York. So I was out of that.
But was it frustrating to not be able to voice out your concern?
Well, it was in a sense frustrating, but I realized that, there's a difference between voicing out your concern and just always badgering people with empty thoughts. Do you understand what I'm saying? It's like, you could go out there and say what you have to say, but if you keep talking and just keep talking and talking, sometimes it doesn't have any substance behind it anymore. It just becomes noise. It's like it's that type of thing. How you don't want a guy who's too talkative. You want a guy who will speak his mind, but not a guy who will just keep on blabbing about issues that no one really cares about.
Yeah.
Really?
It takes away from the sincerity. It takes away from the substance in what he's talking about.
You really
so
know,
even
you really know your woman well. That means. But you're
Well,
right. But you're right on the substance part. So your time during university, what do you actually use it mainly?
Sorry, my time during the university.
Yeah, your time during your university, because you are away from your country. Did you reflect on the political situation in the country and on what, or did you try to figure out how to improve things or make things better, or networking with Filipinos who are also having the same kind of concern about the Philippines?
That's actually a good question. Every time I travel to go abroad, the purpose is less on me just enjoying the stay there, but more on me gathering whatever I could to bring back to the Philippines, whether it's connections, my experiences, which I share with the youth, or whatever knowledge I can gain. Because when I go abroad, I like to go to countries and find out what makes those countries successful, and bring that back to my home country and use it to do things like government programs, help my mom create legislation, or just, inform the youth who don't always have the opportunity to go abroad. Because if your eyes are opened by your experiences abroad, it's your obligation to go back home and tell those who aren't as fortunate as you about what your experiences are, so that in a way they can also try and move in a direction of progress. Globalization is definitely progress, and so are things like the ASEAN integration, which is why traveling is so important. Now, you were asking me what I did while I was in Fordham, if I did anything that, if I learned anything that would be useful for my country back home, or if I did any networking. While I was in Fordham, I actually joined the United Nations Association of the United States of America. And during that, I remember during that conference, they were asking the delegates to ask questions. And I stood up and I walked over to the microphone. And at that time, the director of the United Nations, Director Woods, I think. Anyway, so, the director of the UN Development Goals, of the UN Millennium Development Goals of the United Nations was there, Director Woods.
Right.
And I asked her, I'm from the Philippines. I came from halfway around the world. I'm attending this event, and I just wanted to ask what your programs are for the Philippines, because, I mean, I don't feel it. I don't feel the UN presence in the Philippines. And that was like 2012. Anyway, and she was so surprised by the answer because everyone else was, saying pretty much pat yourself on the back statements like, you guys are doing a good job here. What can you do to improve this? But I was the only one who said, well, no, actually, I don't feel your presence in the Philippines, and I don't feel you helping with our Millennium Development Goals. So she was impressed by that and actually asked to speak with me after the conference. And so we exchanged contact information, and I tried to set her up with some of our local youth organizations here. Now, whether or not anything actually transpired because of that, I'm not even sure anymore because, I left that in the hands of the different organizations here. That's probably the most frustrating thing about being a youth leader is that you realize that you can't do everything on your own. Sometimes you just have to trust other people and hope that they're going to be able to help you realize your vision for the country and for your fellow countrymen and the youth. Mm-hmm. And sometimes it doesn't always work out the way you want, and that's frustrating. But the truth is, you really have to learn how to trust people, and if they can't carry it, then it's not your fault. But that doesn't mean you should stop trying.
Mm-hmm. That's definitely spot on. Anyway, Brian, we will take one short break. When we return, we will expand the discussion to ASEAN and the ASEAN youth.
my best suit. Got in my car, raced like a jet, all the way to you. Knocked on your door with heart in my hand to ask you a question, 'cause I know that you're an old-fashioned man. Yeah. Can I have your daughter for the rest of my life? Say yes, 'cause I need to know. You say I'll never get your blessing till the day I die. Tough luck, my friend, but the answer is no. Why you gotta be so rude? Don't you know I'm human too? Why you gotta be so rude? I'm gonna marry you anyway. Marry that girl. Marry you anyway. Marry that girl. Yeah, no matter what you say. Marry that girl. And we'll be a family. Why you gotta be so I hate to do this, you leave no choice. Can't live without her. Love me or hate me, we will be boys. Standing at that altar. Or we will run away to another galaxy, you know she's in love with me. She will go anywhere I go. Can I have your daughter for the rest of my life? Say yes, 'cause I need to know. You say I'll never get your blessing till the day I die. Tough luck, my friend, 'cause the answer's still no. Why you gotta be so rude? Don't you know I'm human too? Why you gotta be so rude? I'm gonna marry you anyway. Marry that girl. Marry you anyway. Marry that girl. No matter what you say. Marry that girl. And we'll be a family. Why you gotta be so Can I have your daughter for the rest of my life? Say yes, 'cause I need to know. You say I'll never get your blessing till the day I die. Tough luck, my friend, but no still means no. Why you gotta be so rude? Don't you know I'm human too? Why you gotta be so rude? I'm gonna marry you anyway. Marry that girl. Marry you anyway. Marry that girl. No matter what you say. Marry that girl. And we'll be a family. Why you gotta be so yeah. Why you gotta be so Why you gotta be so rude?
The Durian Heat, bringing big ideas, critical opinions in Southeast Asia. Hey, this is Arlene,
Good morning, this is Grace.
and we are back again with Brian Poe to talk about ASEAN integration and youth in Southeast Asia. So, you've been sharing a lot about your life experiences, which is can be made into a book, I would suppose.
Thank you.
But just to expand the discussion on youth, can you share us some thoughts about issues and challenges of youth in the Philippines as well as in Southeast Asia? If you have some of your peers that would that they share their issues, their challenges with you.
Right. Okay. Well, I guess I can speak more on the Philippines if I can think of something while I'm talking. I'll bring up Southeast Asian examples. But for the youth in the Philippines, it's funny because the Philippines actually doesn't have a big employment problem. Actually, our employment rate is at 94%, which actually isn't so bad.
Yeah.
With only 6% unemployed, we're actually doing pretty good. But the problem is more on underemployment. We have students who are graduating as doctors but settling for being nurses abroad. We have, lawyers who are graduating, but, they're taking whatever work they can get because there are just so many lawyers working in Metro Manila. And the problem is so many of the jobs are in Metro Manila that nearby provinces have to send their kids here to work when they actually come from provinces that are maybe 2 hours, 3 hours away. So they end up staying away from their families. And the thing is, it's an issue because we're wasting the potential of our youth. And the fact of the matter is that the majority of our country's population is under the age of 30. In fact, the biggest bulk of the voting population is under the age of 30. So we're looking at a young country with a lot of potential that's not being harnessed properly because of the lack of development in terms of expanding the market, opening up jobs.
Interesting that you mentioned about the population of youth in the Philippines. The rest of Southeast Asia would have plus and minus similar numbers of youth percentage. Majority of them are youth in Southeast Asia. In fact, in Southeast Asia, it can be considered a very young continent compared to the rest of other developed countries and underdeveloped countries.
Right. Actually, that's a good point. I mean, if we look at the Philippines, we're looking at a country that's very similar to its neighbors, like Malaysia, Indonesia, Thailand, Vietnam. And in terms of population, in terms of the type of businesses that we have, the agricultural intensive economy, and things like that. But in general, these are the problems that we're facing specifically in the Philippines in terms of underemployment. I'm not sure what the situation is in our neighboring ASEAN countries regarding employment, but
I think it would be the same in terms of mismatch of talents, underemployment, or even in the case of wage, they give more than what, and they produce more than what they are getting in terms of the value of their wage. So it's a huge problem in Southeast Asia.
But then my question here is, most of Southeast Asia do carry the problem when it comes to employment and also job opportunity in the country. But in the Philippines, how has the government done towards these issues, particularly among youth?
Okay, well, that's a good question. One of the things that we've done is, well, first of all, we have to make sure that our graduates take courses or things that would most likely get jobs. And we have this thing called technical education schools. So basically, these schools teach you vocational skills. So welding, basic carpentry, farming, things like that. And the thing is, these schools, it's not like a 4-year course that's dedicated to like political science or anything, but more practically, it's to help people who are unemployed get employment because they now have skills that they can use to be employed. And it's growing in popularity here in the Philippines, but it's not as successful as, for example, their version of vocational skills training in Singapore. But that's the type of model that you want to have in a country like ours, wherein you're trying to get people employed and give them relevant skills. Because again, like I said earlier, and like you guys were saying, there's a mismatch of graduates and their talents and the jobs that they're getting.
But
just
why
because
do you think this is happening?
Well, part of the reason is the fact that
I guess to further expand my question, why do you think it's happening? And do you think is it because the education system in a lot of the countries in Southeast Asia is obsolete?
Okay. Well, two questions. Okay, so the first question I'll tackle is the education system in Southeast Asia.
Right.
Regarding the education system in Southeast Asia, it's not that I feel that it's obsolete, but the fact that there are a lot of things that need to be improved. Like, for example, in the Philippines, we have graduates that graduate so young. I remember I got into college at the age of, I graduated high school at 16. When I did my study abroad program in Fordham, I was a junior at the age of 19. So, that's kind of a competitive setback, because you have really young people going into workforces with 30-year-olds, 25-year-olds,
Right.
and they feel intimidated because all of their coworkers are so much older than they are. And, it's hard for some of them to adjust. And the other thing is, they don't have that 2 extra years of schooling that they could have used to develop themselves. Now, in the Philippines, what we did to correct this is we implemented the K-12 program, which basically added those 2 extra years. So now when we graduate, we're at that age, and we're technically globally competitive in terms of, the Western standards in Europe and America, because there was a time when Europe was saying that we may not accept some of your employees because of the fact that they're lacking units in education in terms of the European standard. And so, of course, to react to the global need for employment, since we have so many OFWs, I think we have something like 2.4 million OFWs. Since we have so many, it was important for us to be able to compete globally, and that's why we improved our educational system. And I mean, again, going back to the example of Singapore, which also changed its educational system, and the reason why they changed it was, well, we all know that Singapore performs extremely well in terms of its economy, but they still have that problem with job mismatch, because at that one point in time, how many years back, they were facing a problem that they had graduates from college who couldn't get a job because of the fact that there were just no job openings left for the type of course that they graduated, which is why they opened the vocational schools, so that they could take short courses, maybe 2-year programs, and be able to be employed right away, because they had a very specific set of skills that companies wanted. So by doing that, they circumvented the problem, and now their employment is better than ever. So we're looking at that problem from that perspective. So that's education. What was the second question? Sorry.
The second question is about. I think the question revolves around the education system and how the younger generation are having a problem of mismatch of talent. So I think you probably answer both of the question.
Yeah.
You have answered.
Okay.
But at the same time, I would like to ask you, is it the problem, the root cause of the problem in Southeast Asia in general, is it because we are just so much have focused on academical skills rather than all the softer skills that are required more in the society? When when you work in the reality, all this job environment and the working environment, the culture itself.
I mean, I give one example where in Singapore there's a huge competition between Singaporeans, mainland Chinese, and also people from the Philippines who migrated there because of the differences in terms of their soft skill level, and usually there would be some resentment towards the local resident in Singapore because for example, their mastery of English is not as good as the Filipinos, or certain skills they might not be as good as the foreign expat, so they can't get the job even though they even though they feel that it's their right to get a job in their own country.
Right. Well, let's see. How do you tackle a problem like that? See, actually, that's the interesting thing about the ASEAN integration. So we're talking a lot about mismatch of jobs and the youth not being able to get the jobs that they want in different countries, in their own countries. Here's the thing. If the ASEAN integration works out properly and the economic communities really develop, we're looking at the ability for people of different nationalities to go to countries where their jobs are needed more. Like, for example, this is just an example, but let's say Vietnam needed more English-speaking lawyers. Well, then the lawyers here who are unemployed would be able to easily move there because of the economic integration. because we open our borders to services, to more jobs, and just on the basis that jobs in some countries may have a hard time opening in other countries. Because, like, for example, in the Philippines, we have this economic policy where in order for you to open a business here, it has to be 60-40. It has to be owned 60% by a Filipino and only 40% by a foreign owner. And that makes it hard for people to invest in the Philippines, which is why it's one of the economic provisions that we're trying to change in government right now. But it's difficult because it's written into our constitution. So it will really take both Congress and the Senate to lobby to change it. But that's my point. I mean, things like that make it hard for businesses to open in our country, which makes it hard for us to give more jobs to our young graduates and diversify the amount of jobs that we do have in the country. So once the economic integration in the ASEAN region takes place, we're hoping that this allows us to fill the needs of other countries in terms of the workforce, while at the same time filling the needs of the youth in terms of the jobs that they need to get. Because we're a very service-oriented country in the Philippines.
So what you meant is what it needs to address in terms of ASEAN integration is to address the non-tariff barriers that can be addressed either through better legislation and maybe to improve the laws and the policy of the particular country.
Right. And you're right about the tariff barriers and about trying to open up the country more. And, that's what we're trying to do. But again, there are a lot of conservative groups that are against it and are worried that our national products will suffer because, for example, in terms of agriculture, it's not that easy for the Philippines to compete in terms of rice, sugar, against countries like Thailand, which produces a lot of rice.
Yeah. I think majority of Malaysian imports on rice is also from, unfortunately, Thailand.
Yes, yeah.
But different countries have different focus in terms of agricultural produce.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Well, I mean, it depends on what country you're in. Like, for example, in the Philippines, we could be more competitive in things like cocoa. In terms of our coconuts, in terms of, we could fix the problem of rice if we just really looked into it.
Or you just change your diet.
Yeah, well, we could do that.
That's just a joke.
Well, it's funny because actually there was a study in the Philippines. I forgot which group did it, but if every Filipino just set aside that one extra scoop of rice in terms of spoon, like that one extra bite that they would do normally, we could actually solve the hunger problem in the Philippines.
Yeah. But I do notice rice is a very important staple in the Philippines from morning to evening to probably supper.
Oh, yeah. That's right. You were
rice.
here.
Yes,
right.
I was here in the Philippines early last month.
That's right.
Yeah.
Everything has rice here. Even our dessert is rice. But, that's the thing. Just a fun fact, that we actually have the same number of irrigated rice fields since the 1970s.
Wow.
We haven't changed since the 1970s. And I think that leads to one of the reasons why we're not as competitive in that field. But again, I mean, going back to the integration issue, it's an opportunity. I was at a business forum, and I was asking one of the entrepreneurs if we were ready for the ASEAN integration in terms of our entrepreneurs, like our young entrepreneurs who are graduating. Right. Because as of now, they're having a hard time. What more if foreign business comes in? And it's funny because I was expecting her to react negatively and say, well, actually, I'm against it. But her reaction was more, no, we should take it as a positive thing.
Oh.
It allows for more competition in the country, and hopefully it will motivate workers, employees, entrepreneurs to work harder, to open more businesses and diversify. And on the flip side, it allows us the opportunity to open businesses abroad. So it's not necessarily a bad thing. It depends on how you do it. And see, and that's when you realize that you're not the entrepreneur, they are, because they have that positive outlook on life.
Actually, that's
true.
a very good point. And at the same time, with to become entrepreneur, a lot of younger generation, they make use of internet a lot, and with the easier access to the via electronic devices, they have another like sort of fresh idea of becoming an entrepreneurship has created among younger generations. What is your perspectives? What is your view on this?
Well, yes. Okay. The youth use the internet a lot for businesses and for getting information, right? Here's the thing though. Like, okay, for businesses, it's fine. It's good that they try to compete through the internet because it's hard to be able to open an actual stall in the Philippines.
Right.
Like, for example, I opened a business stall, food, like a restaurant stall in my college. And it was so hard to maintain. I mean, just the startup capital for something like that, we're talking about hundreds of thousands of pesos.
Yeah.
And, it's not something that just anyone can afford to do. So we're talking about this online platform for selling and reselling goods is actually helping young people get the starting capital that they need to be able to open businesses, for example, stalls, or be able to rent a space.
Right.
Because again, it's not that easy to get that starting capital, especially with the lack of funds.
Yeah, that's
so
very true.
So you take it positively when it comes to the internet and how the youth are using it to actually propel businesses and also maybe social causes.
Okay. On social causes, it's different. In terms of businesses, I agree. The youth are using it properly, responsibly, and are doing their best to be entrepreneurs. But on the side of social advocacies and things like that, I miss the days when you had to go read a newspaper or watch the actual news to be able to get the news, have an informed decision, and make an informed statement. Now, it's the most frustrating thing in the world, especially if you're a journalist, that people go on the internet, read one tagline, and suddenly start commenting as if they knew the issue, only to find out later on that they actually didn't know the issue and they just misled their 1,500 followers on the internet regarding a pressing issue. And it's really frustrating. I see it happen all the time.
And
I have... Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, I totally agree with you. And to add more salt to the situation right now, I feel that the internet has allowed young people to actually share non-news as news. I think I'm sure you probably heard about the split between whether that a particular dress that was shared all over social media, whether it was blue, black, or gold white.
Oh, yes.
Yes. Yeah, see, here's the thing. Social media and the internet has given us so much freedom that we just don't know what to do with it sometimes. So we just post whatever we can that we find interesting and declare it as, in a sense, newsworthy. And it's frustrating because they're becoming more and more used to it. And they don't bother watching the news anymore. They don't bother reading the newspaper anymore. They don't read the full article. They just read the tweet. And then, or they just read, the BuzzFeed post.
Yes.
I mean, it's creating a brain drain in the culture that we have today. And, for the people who actually go out there and read the news and try to comment online, there are just so many people who, in a young term, troll them. Because they find their opinion too high-minded, too high-handed for the internet. And it's frustrating because I feel that it's killing journalism in a sense, because you have this new phenomenon of citizen journalism.
Yeah.
Now, there's nothing wrong with citizen journalism in terms of people trying to get the facts and report the news as best they can. There's nothing wrong with that. I do have a problem, however, with people who tweet or post incomplete details, lack of facts, and pass it off as news, misleading their followers or the people who read their posts, because that ends up conflicting with actual journalism. And then journalism in a sense, like, for example, TV journalism or written journalism is slower, of course, than that type of citizen journalism, right?
Yep.
But the reason why it's slower is because we have to vet the information before we post it on the internet or on TV. And that becomes our greatest weakness, not our greatest strength in terms of our viewing audience, because the younger our audience gets, the more they want the information to be instant. And it's hard because, no, we can't give you vital information instantly, because we want to give you the information as accurately as possible so that you, who have the ability as the youth to make a difference in the country, you have the right information to make the right decision versus
So the
what they
internet
have now.
the internet is definitely creating a new culture among the younger society where everything is instant. It can be seen as a good thing, but overall it can be detrimental to, especially when you want to seek for truth, you want to give the complete idea of the information that is being presented. So
Right.
for your view, your own opinion on this, do you think a lot of misinformation about the ASEAN economic community or about ASEAN or about, things that is happening in Southeast Asia is being spread around? Or there's just a lack of even awareness or knowledge about it because there's just so many non-news becoming news, or misinformed news become the talk of the day?
So because of that, the attraction level on the non-news becomes just so much higher than the actual news.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Actually, I mean, you bring up a good point. Not everyone's like Durian ASEAN. He's really trying to make an effort. Not everyone, like in the Philippines, we actually have a news portal that's dedicated to social media called Rappler. And I know some of the Rappler reporters, and they work very hard to try and deliver accurate news as best as possible. Some of them even facing complaints because the people that they're reporting against feel threatened by the news that they're presenting.
Right.
And, that's journalism. But then, on the other hand, you have people who are out there just, like you said, tweeting non-news or non-useful information. And you were asking earlier if I feel that the youth have a hard time finding the right type of news about the ASEAN region. And, it's actually true, because where do you go to find that? I mean, you guys are around. But the problem is, if I didn't attend the Gawad ASEANO award ceremony, I wouldn't have known about you guys.
Yep.
It's hard to get word around about which, and this is another problem about social media, is how do you know which sites are the ones that you should follow? How do you know which ones have been vetted, which ones have the integrity, the journalistic integrity to report good news? So you have a ton of websites to pick from now, and then it falls on you. Actually, the thing with the internet is a lot of it falls on the user to decide whether or not the information they're looking at is what they believe to be newsworthy. Mm-hmm. And their clicks justify that website. So if one website has like 1 million, 2 million, 3 million views, suddenly that's what's trending on the internet. But here's the thing. You can't condemn social media because it really is the future. There's no way to go around it. This is information traveling as fast as it can. Mm-hmm. The problem is, how do we make sure that it's accurate, that it's useful? And the thing is, we're still trying to figure that out. But I'll give you an example of how social media was useful in a newsworthy way. I don't know if you've heard about the issue in the Philippines about SAF 44.
Yes.
Okay, so the SAF 44, just for background for your listeners, are they're an elite the SAF are an elite unit of the Philippine National Police. basically they're the unit we send in for counterterrorism and things like that.
It's like the SWAT team, if you equate it with the American version. Would that be?
Yeah, it's like the best of the SWAT team.
Mm-hmm.
And so what happened was they went to a place in the southern part of the Philippines called Mindanao to hunt down 2 terrorists who were responsible for bombings across the ASEAN region.
And one of it is a Malaysian, unfortunately.
Unfortunately, one is a Malaysian. And the problem, they were able to get one of them, Marwan, but at the cost of the lives of 44 SAF commandos. And they died because of miscommunication between government forces, the Philippine National Police and the Army of the Philippines. And so it was a big issue. And we were all starving for facts. What really happened? What did our troops, what did our police officers face when they were on the ground? Until one day, someone posted on the internet a video of one of the terrorists shooting one of the SAF officers point blank. And that video went viral. And here's the thing. We, in terms of the news, TV and radio news, newspapers, none of us had that video. A citizen had that video. You get what I'm saying?
Yep.
So in that sense, posting it online and then people deciding that it's newsworthy and sharing it allowed us to get that video and use it to broadcast to the millions on our airwaves. And that is how citizens can use the right information to make things newsworthy. But it doesn't always happen. In fact, the majority of the time, it doesn't happen. So now it's a matter of trying to get people to be able to decide for themselves what is newsworthy, what is worth posting on the internet. Not everything is worth posting in the internet, and people have to realize that.
That's definitely spot on. Anyway, we are towards the end of our discussion. But before we end our discussion, just a bit of discussion on the ASEAN Youth, because you went to the ASEAN Youth Summit's Gawat ASEANO Awards.
Right.
What is the impression you have when you look at all the youth from all over Southeast Asia when they came to the award?
I love going to those type of things because that's when you realize that beyond the borders of countries, we're really just people that are looking to make friends and to expand opportunities. You know, when I was at that conference, everyone there was smiling. It's a bunch of people, not just people, these are leaders in their own countries. These are future leaders of their countries. And they were all smiling, happy to get to know each person's culture, each person's background. And I think that's one of the things that that's good about our generation, that's good about the younger generations, is that we're more open to globalization. We're more open to different cultures. We're more culturally sensitive. We're better in terms of our intercultural exchanges. And I think that spells progress for the future.
Mm-hmm.
If you can have more conferences like that, the ASEAN Youth Summit, it would be beneficial for both countries.
So you have
There's
to come
so
to
many different
Malaysia
programs.
this year for the ASEAN Youth Summit in Malaysia.
Right. I've never actually been to Malaysia. I've been to Singapore, Thailand.
So
where else have I been?
this year, the ASEAN Summit will be held in Malaysia another 2
wow.
months.
Yep.
Actually, it's not 2 months. It's next month.
Yeah.
And also, prior to the ASEAN Summit, there will be ASEAN Youth Summit as well as ASEAN People's Forums. ASEAN Youth Forum and ASEAN People's Forum. So,
Yeah.
you should come to Malaysia and experience the environment here, how different it is from the Philippines.
and experience Malaysia, truly Asia, right?
Yeah, and Malaysia is actually a very interesting country. So if you want to know more about it, it's better to visit the country and see what's going on here. But I can agree with you, Brian, on what you felt when you were at the ceremony in the Philippines, because even we felt that as representing media from Durian ASEAN to go there and see all the smiles on their faces, how they were excited to share their views from different culture and also the backgrounds. But then after all, there should be a common ground when it comes to youth in ASEAN. And what is your view on this? And what is your wish from youth ASEAN?
Yeah.
My wish for the youth in the ASEAN region. Well, actually, I guess my wish for the youth in the ASEAN region is that we all look forward to progress and really building a strong economic community together. There's still people who are iffy about ASEAN integration, and instead of being iffy about it, they should be planning how to make the most of it. Because the truth of the matter is, globalized society is moving in such a direction that there's no such thing as a country that can stand on its own without any international support anymore. And we're talking about an opportunity to build something as great as the European Union here in Southeast Asia that will give us better bargaining with international personalities like China, for instance, or the United States. It gives us a sense of security. It gives us a sense of ownership of the region, really, a shared sense of camaraderie between cultures that are so similar. And that's one of the things that I want people to realize. I hope, my wish is that the youth of the ASEAN region realize that we have more in common than we have in terms of our differences, and that we can use that to hopefully push the entire region forward, not just one country or the other, but the entire region.
With that, thank you very much, Brian Poe.
Yeah, no problem. Oh, by the way, if you do decide to come to the Philippines, I really suggest that you check out, there's like this website I just found out about recently called FlipTrip, fliptrip.ph. And the thing that makes it cool is it lets you it helps you visit parts of the Philippines that not everyone gets to visit.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah, no, that's why I decided to bring it up, just in case you guys or any of your listeners wanted to go, because when you come to the Philippines, most people think of Boracay.
Yes, that's true.
Yeah, but we have so many other awesome beaches and great places to look at. And this is the first website that I've heard of that really caters to that. Anyway, so just word to the wise.
Right.
So anyway, thank you very much, yeah?
Yeah, definitely. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, have a good day.
Yeah, you too. You too.